Welcome to our new show on women, wealth, and social change, where we are unpacking what is not working in philanthropy and impact investing, as well as the opportunities that we have before us to do things in a much more impactful way. And today we have another really phenomenal guest, Greg Neichin. I want to make sure I'm saying that correctly, but Greg, welcome.
Thanks, Alex. It's great to be here.
Great. And Greg, you're familiar to this. I mean, we've been on many different, panels and conversations about this big topic around philanthropy and impact investing. And so we're just really grateful that you found some time to share your insights with us today. We've got 20 minutes to unpack a pretty big topic, so we are just going to dive right in.
Right.
Greg, tell us a little bit more about, who you are and a little bit about your impact investing journey, particularly with Ceniarth.
Sure. So first, I just want to thank you for having me on the show. Love what you're trying to do here, and guess I'm especially thankful to represent well-intentioned men on the Women, Wealth, and Social Change podcast, and for that reason, I think it's worth noting that the only reason that I'm here today is really because of the leadership of a remarkable woman, and that's Diane Eisenberg, and the privilege that I have to work for her and to work with her in building Ceniarth. And I think in some ways we have what can be an endemic problem in the family office and philanthropy world, that even when there are strong women principals, when there's strong women asset owners, that actually too much attention can get diverted to people like me, to advisors, to professionals around them who typically are men. So this is something that Diane and I have both observed time and time again over the years. So, don't want to go on a tangent, but I guess I want to say that I'm here today with a real spirit of humility. That I'm proud of the job that I do at Ceniarth, that I'm proud of our team, but that we only exist because of Diane's total clarity on mission and direction. So, with that preamble, so who are we at Ceniarth, and where do I fit in? So Ceniarth is the impact first family office of Diane Eisenberg, and maybe we'll get into some follow-ups about unpacking this idea of impact first. But I guess by way of introduction, I'll just say that for us, impact first means investing in geographies or vulnerable communities, primarily rural places where market rate finance first impact investing doesn't really work, and where there are trade-offs between impact and return. And you wouldn't think that's a radical statement, but apparently for the sector it is. So we at Ceniarth, we manage both Diane's personal assets as well as the assets of a private foundation. It means we deploy a wide range of capital types, from unrestricted assets to foundation program related investments. We manage around $450 million in total. So we're a relatively large size family office engaged in the field. We do 20 to 25 deals a year. We commit $30 to $40 million in new money every year. So we're a busy team, and we do it all in-house, all ourselves. We can maybe get into this topic of advisors and intermediaries, but we're a team of 12, primarily out of the UK, with me in the States. And I guess the last thing, just by way of introduction, in terms of how I got here, and I guess it's really sort of pure serendipity. I think I said on another podcast that I didn't grow up. I didn't grow up thinking I was going to work for a family office. I didn't know what a family office was, I guess, until I really got into it with Diane. And I'm in this field because I had the great fortune of meeting Diane and being inspired by her, and really being lucky enough to get a job working with her. But I was generally in this field of using money for good before I met Diane, with the exception of brief stint as a management consultant. I had sort of dove into the social entrepreneurship sector, helping to build a business called Get Active Software, which was one of the earliest fundraising platforms for political campaigns and nonprofits back in 2002. So this is,
Wow.
a long time ago in internet time. But it gave me this sense of wanting to work at this intersection of sort of using commercial ventures for social good, and went on to help run a business called the Clean Tech Group, helping investors in clean energy and renewables markets, which is where I met Diane when I was given a keynote talk, and was lucky enough to meet Diane, who had come on a bit of a fact-finding mission when she was first taking responsibility for her family's assets, and really has been the start of an amazing journey over the last 8 years as we've built Ceniarth.
That's great, Greg. And I have to say, one of the reasons I was deeply excited that you were going to come on our show, during our pilot season is one, you absolutely represent a great community of male allies. And while the show is definitely built around Women Plus, we've been waiting for, and we would love to speak with Diane, I also think it's great that we've got, men who are part of this group, because the ultimate goal is to lead with men, right? It's not to replace men, it's to create this greater balance between men and women. And you've also just always been a very candid, authentic voice in this community. I know that we first met when we spoke at a mission-related investment conference, and it was in the thick of 2020 and everything was just exploding around us. Mm-hmm. And I really felt very fortunate that you came on this panel with this voice of, let's just really be authentic in terms of where the impact investing industry is and what it needs to achieve, all that it needs to achieve. And then thirdly, I've been very lucky to work with you and Diane as someone within water equity, an impact investment manager dedicated to water and sanitation, and just really had a front row seat to your vision. When I say you, I mean Ceniarth, around really making room and prioritizing these investment opportunities that are built around first generating real scalable social impact, and secondly, have an opportunity to generate a modest financial return. So for all those reasons, we are very grateful that you're here to share your expertise. And so, diving in, I think that in many of the conversations that we've had, Greg, and certainly having had the luck of experiencing this at Water Equity under, Gary White's leadership, the CEO and co-founder of Water.org and Water Equity, I really saw the opportunities that are within impact investing, but also the deep challenges. And the challenges are a little bit similar to philanthropy in the sense that it is really hard to find large sums of capital that are going to build something that doesn't yet exist. Of course, believing a track record in a way that eventually creates lots of room for the institutional markets to step in and scale it even further. There's a lot of great actors in this missing middle, the family offices, the development financial institutions, the foundations. But I often feel that what is missing is that actor early on that's going to come in with millions, if not billions in dollars to build these markets. And we've talked about this at these various conferences where, impact investing is doing great things, but is it really scaling at the pace that we've all wanted to see this industry scale, where family offices and foundations are not endlessly providing first loss for the institutional market, where development financial institutions could really come in and provide equity to build these new markets. And so what I wanted to ask you is really two things, and we can unpack it together. But one, from the portfolio of investments that you've seen grow over the years at Ceniarth, are there maybe some learnings that you want to share, related to what we're talking about? And secondly, what changes would you want to see happen within this industry that would perhaps facilitate a greater scale of all of these, really impactful funds out there striving to address inequality and climate change in water?
Yeah. So
two big questions.
There's a lot. Yeah. How long do we have? So I think first I want to talk about learnings, but I also want to talk about maybe this idea of scale and how we're always in some ways self-critiquing ourselves about the lack of scale, or how are we going to bridge to these, the sort of big world of high finance and big commercial dollars. And I think it's interesting that that in some ways we feel this sort of, maybe it's a self-confidence problem for those of us in sort of the impact first world. And I think it's in some ways because it's a framing that is often used by those working on, sort of more finance first work to I think kind of condescend to those of us who are working on many of these issues that require sacrifice, that require, making a stretch into impact first. And I think that it's a framing that I often want to be very careful about, because I think as new asset owners come into the field, that oftentimes that framing can influence their view that there's this stuff that's happening at big scale, and that's what real serious people are doing. And then there's this other end of the field, and they're sort of like, hobbyists and playing around and this sort of impact catalytic stuff. And I think particularly actually for purposes of this podcast, I think that I think it's worth noting, and I think again this is something that Diane points all the time, that framing is often, a framing used by men in finance to discourage the good intentions of female asset holders. That oftentimes female asset holders are coming with really progressive ideas about how to deploy capital for impact, and oftentimes on the other side of that dialogue is a man saying, well, if you really want to get this to scale, it's going to have to connect to commercial finance. And so I think that of course we need more money for everything we do in the impact first world. I'm not sure that the bridge to get there is sort of mainstream finance. I do think, you mentioned development finance institutions, and they've been a huge partner for us in terms of scale. So I guess, and it connects to sort of the learnings that we've had, and kind of where the field needs to go is this sort of bifurcation into really two separate worlds. And I think that one of the confusions we have in this field now is we're trying to sort of mush together, two very different worlds. One world is a world of, large institutional money managers who are focused on things like ESG mandates and big private equity mandates, and they're trying to do that in a more responsible way, right? And I think that's a really good thing. And I think it's going to move the world. I think it's going to be important, right? But it is very different from another half of this field that are people that are starting from the premise, not that we have investment portfolios that we need to figure out how to invest them responsibly, but people who start from the real question that we have capital and we want to put it to use for mission-driven impact, and what is the most effective way that we can use that money for impact. And that's this sort of world of philanthropists and foundations and development agencies, and a world where impact investing is really just one tool in this integrated philanthropic toolkit. And I in many ways, I think, if I had a wand and just, change the sector, I would just separate these things into two different worlds. And we almost would not talk that much, because I think when we talk, we fight over these trade-offs and we get into these sort of endless loops, and it confuses people who are just coming into the field. And I think that it leads them to make suboptimal decisions. So that's what I would note.
I love that, Greg. That's a really, really very valuable insight. And it leads to one really important question. So, oh man, I wish we had an hour. So if the bridge is not the mainstream capital markets, because I absolutely hear what you're saying. It is two very different worlds. And if you're going out and you're scaling and you're sharing a story around the opportunity to solve a big issue, and it's led with a narrative around the financial case, and we might be losing the essence of what we're trying to do here, or it might get too much into that other world, which doesn't mean it's necessarily bad, but there are some very different nuances, especially based on the opportunities that we're speaking about. There is a difference about making a difference for, communities that are living in Haiti versus communities who are living in India versus communities who are living in Latin America. I mean, these are all very different contexts. So if the bridge to solving these trillion-dollar issues is not the mainstream capital market, what is the bridge?
Yeah.
So for instance, if you've got several funds and maybe as an organization, you've got $100 million in assets under management, and you see this viable opportunity to scale from there, what do you do?
Yeah. So first, I guess I do want to clarify that our critique at Ceniarth is really narrowly focused on those working on poverty alleviation and economic development in deeply marginalized, deeply vulnerable communities. And my comments are really centered on that type of work. I don't believe that our impact first view is the solution to every intractable problem in the world. I certainly think there are areas, climate change is a great example, where moving mainstream markets, moving the billions and trillions of dollars into renewables, it's having a massive impact. It is the path forward. But I think for us in the field we work in, it seems sort of, it seems sort of comical that people think, there are these intractable problems of inequality, and we're going to solve them with the same tools that led to these intractable problems of inequality. So I think our critique again is for our corner of the world. So the second part of your question was like, what are these bridges then, right? And I think that we believe that the bridge is working much more closely with traditional philanthropists and in continuing to encourage more and more philanthropy. Philanthropy doesn't need to be exclusively grant giving. It obviously takes a number of different forms, but I guess our view is many of the most successful enterprises in our portfolio and many of the most successful fund managers in our portfolio are set up as nonprofits, or set up as hybrid organizations. They're raising both grant money and investment capital. And I think that those are the organizations where we've seen, complete mission alignment and really, really good execution. So I think that's where we think the sort of future of our pocket of this impact investing universe lies, in those kind of collaborations with philanthropists and foundations and development agencies, not in magically convincing pension funds that they should earn 2% and investing in affordable housing and hard to reach places.
Right. So this is terrific, Greg, and I know we're up for time. We've got 2 minutes, but just to summarize that, because it's really valuable, and it's very interesting, because this is very much in line with many of the conversations that unfolded at water.org and Water Equity, and with other practitioners that we've spoken with in our field of social entrepreneurship and philanthropy and impact investing. And so what I'm hearing from you is that there truly is an opportunity to enhance our impact in the world by working very hard at ensuring that, I'll call it venture philanthropy. So philanthropy that can be flexible, right? So whether we're talking about traditional grants, unrestricted grants, R&D, grants that are particularly for research and development or innovation, working with the whole spectrum of philanthropy and the community of impact first impact investors that range from foundations to family offices to development financial institutions. As a community, there is still so much more that we could do better. We could optimize, where we could just put our best imagination forward as how we collectively address these issues, really honing in on optimizing that, instead of solely kind of saying, let's just make the case for the institutional market and let them step in and fix it all, is really where you see a great opportunity for growth and more impact.
Yep, that makes good sense.
Fantastic, Greg. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. As I had absolutely expected, it was candid, it was bold, it was unscripted. We could definitely talk for another hour, and I certainly hope that we'll have you and Diane come back, when we're heading into some deeper conversations on these topics, and really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thanks. It was great to do it.